But why don't we move on and to the public misperception of meetings, part of this meeting, and just talk a little bit about that. You know, I mean, meetings and incentives, they are definitely being demonized and associated with the greed of top executives, when in reality, as you're saying, that they're part of the solution to a stagnant economy. I mean, what do any of you guys think can be done to shift that perception in the public court of public opinion?
We've got to tell the story. Mm-hmm. Our industry has done so many amazing things over the years, but what we haven't done is invested time, money, and resources and talent into educating planners, corporate executives about the ROI attached and the value to doing a meeting or event. Mm-hmm. You know, to date, how do you measure that event? By how many people showed up? By the post-con surveys? By the CEO saying, I had a great time? That doesn't cut it anymore in business anywhere. You've got to be able to come back. There's an effort underway. Actually, sent a note to Michael Goldsmith yesterday by a leading industry executive who's prepared to come out and spend time with the city and do specific training with all of our properties, bipartisan training on the value of meetings and the ROI of meetings. There's an actual ROI case model study that's been proven out that I think we need to add into our vocabulary and educate our customers on what that means, what that looks like.
Well, and the ROI...
They have to defend the position when they go into the CFO.
Yeah, and defend the position is the key. I think these CEOs and these vice presidents of sales for these companies, I think they know that these meetings are valuable to do. Otherwise, they wouldn't be spending the type of money that they spend on doing them. I think they'd have to learn how to articulate it. I think it's an articulation question. It's how do I answer those types of questions? Because they're selling having a sales meeting to somebody who believes you should have a sales meeting. So they've never had to really articulate this issue well under duress. And so I think this articulation question, I think that's what you're saying is
Richard and I were talking the other night, and one of the best things I've seen is Dick Gaeta's comments. Yeah. You know, that's the stuff that these people need to hear and they need to see. They need to see what the return is when they go home and their sales go up. Indeed. You know, when they have a sales meeting. And if you talk to the CEOs, you talk to the meeting planners, I don't think they would argue with you that having a meeting and having face-to-face sale, whatever it is, there's definite value there for their company. But what it's the press. They're getting cremated in the press. Well, so the message, I think, is we're saying, you know, focus on the future, focus on what the importance is in all ways, from our perspective, from the company's perspective, and the economy, all of those things. I think that's what we focus on more than, obviously there's a lot of political things that we also need to do kind of on the back end. But, you know, we've got to start talking to these people. We've got to be more educated. We've got to be out there saying the same thing as a city. We've got to work closer together. And I think this is a great start, you know, to be able to, obviously there's been a lot of other things that have been done, but this is great to get everybody at the same table and get it all out and talk about what we're doing.
Excuse me for interrupting. Gently and not so gently at times correct either misperceptions or things that are just out and out wrong. Mm-hmm. The AFL-CIO holds its Labor of Love event. Probably the last 40 years, 30 of those years have been at Fontainebleau, Miami Beach. And everything that's coming out in the press talks about the fact that Fontainebleau, Miami Beach's rates are in the 400s, which is absolutely true. And AFL-CIO's rate was nowhere near that level, but they approached Fontainebleau, Miami Beach, and they actually reduced the rate after they forecasted that revenue and so forth. And, you know, that kind of thing doesn't come out. It's just, it does strike you as a little bit unfair.
Yeah, going back to the necessity of meetings, you know, you do probably want to go cross-industry. I agree with you. You got to give some examples. When a pharmaceutical company gets FDA approval on a drug, they do need to bring all the doctors in to properly educate them on the drugs, or else there's no other way to do it. Can't really do that over the internet or through television or other forms of the marketing mix. So whether this is, and obviously, I don't know, this is not specific to Nevada, though. We're talking about.
Yeah.
Okay.
Exactly.
Okay.
But that's the story,
again, but that's the story.
That's the story.
A pharmaceutical does the same thing all over the United States. An automotive company that's got a new product release still has to bring the owners of the dealerships together at some point, whether it's in a city or a hotel. They got to educate them on the new features.
So I called Bruce McMillan shortly after all this started to develop, and I said, okay, you were in Toronto during the SARS scare. So let's talk about crisis management, because that's where we're at. How did you handle that? How did your destination handle that? And he said, really, it took some time, a lot of communication, a lot of teamwork, which clearly this group is I would say, better than anyone. although we're not very public and open about that. We work very well with each other because we all have a common cause. But what he said that was a turning point was an all-clear signal. There had to be some type of an all-clear signal that said it's okay to come to Toronto and everything will be fine. And that took, I want to say, a testimonial. It may have been a full-page ad from American Library Association that said, I just did a meeting here. I had X thousand of attendees here, and everything went great. And we need to find our all-clear message, our all-clear vehicle, and our all-clear timeline. And from that, I think people will say, okay, I'm not going to get ridiculed, I'm not going to get chastised, or maybe not as much. And oh, by the way, what an amazing value. All the reasons, and I've said this many times, all the reasons that people chose Vegas as the top meetings and conventions destination and trade shows in the world, not beyond anywhere else, beyond the world, those haven't changed.
Good point.
None of those reasons have changed. Matter of fact, it's just gotten more affordable to some
So the
folks.
all-clear signal would be either having the president or the vice president come to Las Vegas and have a photo op in a meeting or a trade show or something like that that shows that they're in a business environment.
And or a major Fortune 500 financial company,
That's willing to
TARP or
stick
no
their neck
TARP,
out.
that stands up and says, I'm doing Vegas.
Time is such a great healer, and over time, not being proactive, which I know we all don't want to be, it will go away and we'll come back years down the road and all that kind of thing. But due to the fact that the damage was kind of done up top, it almost needs to be rectified if we want to do this in a timely fashion, in my opinion, from up top. And back to your point, Chris, if the president or someone directly below the president were to come out and not retract necessarily, but put a new spin on exactly what he said, I think that would, from a time standpoint, help us out a whole lot more than writing this out and seeing the increase in our business happen again.
Yeah.
Well, the tact is too, he's it's the economy. Everyone's trying to figure out how to stimulate the economy and how to fix all these problems that we're having. And with people just staying home or people not having meetings and spending money in all of these industries, it isn't going to go anywhere. And yes, time will heal it, but somebody's got to step out there and like you said, say it's okay. Talk about all of the positives and all of the things that are going to happen when people do start to continue to have these meetings or get back to it again. And, that's the message. I mean, this is what's going to help us get there.
Would changing, I guess, the face of what this story is help? Because, I mean, right now the face of the story is, corporate greed, fat cats on top partying on other people's dimes, shifting that to maybe the impact of, all right, meetings go away, and when those meetings go away, that means jobs go away. Is that any part of the equation?
You're talking about 1%.
Small percent.
When you try to change an entire issue, and we're all guilty of it, you hear one little snip and you change your whole process.
Yeah.
Identify and isolate the top 1% where there's a problem, where it is frivolous, where it is not a good time to spend. 99% of it is right. Yeah. It's legitimate. And we've got to be able to push that story out and that message out better than we have.
And a lot of that's the focus also. I mean, right now, every bit of focus of any meeting coming to Las Vegas is scrutinized because there's no business taking place and it's a party. Turn back the clock 2 years ago. The business taking place now is probably just as important or abundant as it was 2 years ago, but now everyone's focusing on something totally different because the economics have changed. We've had some comments from our upper echelon of government that have totally changed the perception to an extent, and they're focusing on something that we haven't focused on from a business standpoint.
Yeah.